Oh God of mysteries, gone far beyond our thinking. We ask for light, you give us night and day, to help us truly find our own way. We want you only, yet you keep us apart, so that we may mend our own broken hearts. Oh God of mystery, beyond our thinking. Oh God of mysteries, far, far beyond our thinking. We live through life and we wonder if you'll be there when it's all ended. You keep your silence, but you give us a sign to let us know we are always befriended. Oh God of mysteries, beyond our thinking. Oh God of mysteries, gone, gone beyond our thinking. Happy is the one who comes to you. Happy is the one, happy are the two. And we dwell in your house, and we eat at your table, and we say the prayers as our hearts are able. Oh God of mystery, beyond our thinking. Oh God of mystery, gone, gone, gone beyond our thinking. You bless the years as they roll on by, and the days are a sign of what you're thinking. We want eternity, and you give us time, and our own lives seem to pass while we're blinking. Oh, God of mysteries beyond our thinking. Oh, God of mysteries gone far beyond our thinking. We ask for light, you give us night and day to help us truly find our own way. We want you only, yet you keep us apart, so that we may mend our own broken heart.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful spring season. On behalf of the Foundation for Nonduality, we welcome you to our next Non-Dual Roundtable discussion, where we, a panel of Jason Schulman senior students and teachers, discuss the interface between ideas about non-duality and our daily lives. We're excited to be here with you today. As you may or may not know, the Foundation for Nonduality is dedicated to making the principles of non-dual thinking and practice, as articulated by Jason Schulman, available to the greater public for the purpose of transforming the consciousness of individuals in order to help alleviate suffering in the world. These principles and their practical application focus on the unitive connection between personal and transcendent consciousness as the foundational basis for change and for healing. Jason Schulman sees the study of non-duality, especially in its practical applications in everyday living, as part of the healing of the human soul. The aim is to live our lives as both healing and healthy individuals who are aware of and connected to the entire web of being, including the totality of who we are. And living the totality of our being means including all of our human parts, including all of them in our awareness, from our great courage and our longing to connect, to our many imperfections that work against these aims. If you don't know Jason Schulman, over the past 40 years of teaching, he's worked to reconcile the deistic and theistic paths of liberation with the consciousness of Buddhism and other non-theistic paths to create a truly non-dual path of healing, one that does not exclude any aspect of reality. His work emphasizes the healing of the personal ego and its rightful place in any path that seeks liberation from ignorance and the awakening of compassion. It also seeks to bring the human world, with its imperfections, into alignment with the realization of transcendent awareness. In this way, we develop a conscious awakening to the sacredness of every sentient being and every time-bound moment. So today, before we dive into the conversation, I'm just going to lead us through a short meditation, and then we'll begin. So why don't everybody just take a moment to settle in. If you can, put your feet on the ground and just start to relax the body. Let your breathing be regular, just as it is. Your breathing is keeping you alive, and that is sufficient. And now I'd like you to begin to invite all of the sounds of your environment in with you today. Invite everything in. Maybe there's the sound of a bird, or or the sound of your stomach rumbling. Maybe the wind or a siren. And just notice these sounds and invite them in. Invite them to be here with you now. Any other sounds that you hear, just notice and invite it in. And while this is happening, I also want you to become aware of different aspects of yourself. I want you to invite all the parts of your being in with you today. Invite everything to be here with you. So you can actually say to yourself, you, the courageous one, come in, be here. You, the one who remembers God from time to time, be here now. You, the one who forgets God from time to time, be here as well. You, the one who forgets to be kind to yourself, be here. You, the shy one, come in and be here. You, the one who has mastery, be here now. Whatever comes into your mind or to your heart, whether it is some form of insight or some great revelation, it does not matter. Just simply be with what's here and invite it in. And let's be with this for a few moments. Okay. So as you're listening, you can gently bring yourself back to the space. And we're going to get started. So today is an opportunity to have a conversation about our spiritual lives. And what we want to do here today is to invite conversation. There will be time for audience interaction, and we'd love for you to participate with questions and comments. And today, we're going to be exploring the role of anger and healing. I'm joined by Damon Farnum and Andrew Resnick. I'm joined by Henrik Nordmark and Eloiza, who's our new guest today, Eloiza George. And why don't we just jump right in? You know, how does healing inform you in your daily lives? How does it affect healing? What's its role? Why don't you just tell me what strikes you, and we can just jump in from there.
I guess I can start. Um, this is still something I struggle with immensely. I, growing up, it wasn't safe to own anger, have anger in my household. My dad seemed often rather aloof, and would shy away from expressing that. And my mom did express her anger, but boy, would you not want to go up against her. And so, even as an adult, I tend to shy away from confrontation and from anger. And I think I've gotten a bit better at it over time to own that and try to give it healthy expression, whatever that means. But yeah, it's not obvious to me at all.
I think the key point there is how you're talking about how anger needs a healthy expression. So from a non-dual perspective, anger has a place. Why don't we take a look at that for a moment? So I think, probably most of us have an idea of what anger is, have an idea of what its place is in our lives, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're confused about it. But why don't we take a moment to clarify a little bit about, why anger? Why even take a look at it? What's its role? And so on.
Can you hear me okay, Tim?
Yeah, you're coming in clear, Damon.
Okay. I mean, if you don't mind, like one of my first thoughts is, as we kind of picked this topic, was just that, sometimes in class or with clients, with people, it actually seems like almost a surprise that anger is something that needs to be worked with. Not everybody, but I guess I just want to address that, in the beginning, is that, on a healing path or a spiritual path, it's like we have these ideas about how we're supposed to be, or some of us do. I don't want to include everybody, but we have these ideas about how we're supposed to be, and a lot of times, I think there for some people, anger doesn't even have a place. Like as spiritual beings, we're supposed to be past that or something. So I think for starters, I just want to say that, from my experience, and I think a lot of people's experience, and it's hopefully what we're going to get into today, is that's not the case. It's a very living thing inside of a lot of people. And then, we can talk about what happens when it doesn't have a place. When we don't let it be a living part of us when it needs to be, and how that can actually cut us off from a lot of things in life. Our vitality, how we express ourselves, connect us into fear. So it is a very living thing that, does need to have a place.
And the non-dual approach to anger sort of leaves us open to an invitation to take a look at it and have a different relationship with anger, a more whole relationship.
I want to echo what Henrik and Damon were saying first about how integrating and working with anger has been part of my healing journey, and having to look at the messages that I got growing up about the appropriateness of anger. And also, Damon, you pointed out that it's not necessarily a global thing. I think that some of our particular problems with anger are related to like North American culture and European culture, where anger and emotion a lot of times is cut off and separated from, or that there's an idea that certain emotions are not appropriate, are not included. And I agree that, I was thinking about developmentally how like even babies and toddlers can express anger, right? So thinking about like, of course, anger is included because it's sort of a part of the developmental process of individuating and part of an expression of our desires.
Yeah. Everyone's right. It's I agree with everyone, and that's a really, I think, important lens also to just look at it culturally, also in kind of even the Judeo-Christian lens through which so many people see things as anger as a bad thing, and the other element of it, which I'm very aware of, is just how, on a basic body somatic level, how uncomfortable it feels. Aside from the clear destructive results on acting it out, um, it makes sense that we want to act it out because it's so uncomfortable to feel, and so it's very easy to want to push it down. And there's also some sort of relief in expressing it and getting it out. We want to do the thing. We want it to move, and that it doing that in the unhealthy ways obviously leads to not great things. But I mean, it makes sense that it's been seen as such a kind of degraded thing because it doesn't feel good. We want to do something with it. Um, I'm not sure where that leads us exactly, but
Now, let's see, Andrew, I think it does feel good sometimes.
you think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you really, I mean,
Really?
not expressing it in like a destructive way towards somebody, or something like that, but like letting the aliveness of the anger, like rip through you, be expressed, in healthy ways, which we'll probably talk about. It's like it actually feels to me freeing, empowering. Um, so yes, I think it can feel really good.
At the
And
risk
maybe
of
that's
sounding
why
a
we're
little bit
scared of it, because there can even be pleasure in it sometimes, which is a weird thing to talk about, but maybe it's one of the reasons that it scares us.
at the risk of sounding a little bit controversial, I would take it a step further and say that even when it is destructive, it can feel quite pleasurable.
Feel quite good. Yeah. Well, it's the letting out of it that feels pleasurable. So, and maybe that's it's the buildup of it does not necessarily feel, from my experience, does not feel good.
Yeah.
But the
Right.
relief, the release is.
I think, yeah. And I think the buildup of it is a cultural and a global problem. Because I think that's why we must talk about anger and deal with anger if we're concerned with healing, because it's a vital part of our expression and our life force. I think also like yes, destructive tendencies, but also boundary setting.
Yeah.
Like when it's a real strong signal that we need a boundary or that we need to tell somebody no or that we need to take care of ourselves. So yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about what things we've noticed in our lives that happen when we try to repress this. I mean, I know for me, I guess that anger can come out in other ways, maybe passive aggressive ways, unintended ways, which in some ways are worse because it's just not like clean and upfront. Like I'm not actually stating what is genuinely bothering me. Or it becomes so repressed that it's like it just becomes like internalized anger, and yeah, that doesn't feel healthy at all.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think, I mean, you could imagine a million different ways that, that it would have to be like kind of repressed and pushed down, I mean, whether it's just like cutting us off from like our emotions and our sense of aliveness, or more active things, eating, or, I mean, there's a million different kind of self-medicating ways too that like something just, we don't like the way it feels. And so, we're just going to like find these ways to, to like not feel it as much.
For me, it showed up as major depression for over half my life. I think when I started to heal that and heal my relationship to anger, not that I'm not angry, but that I have a different relationship to it, I'm much less depressed.
So it sounds like the first step in terms of a non-dual approach to anger is to accept the possibility that there's intelligence in it and that it has a place. So we don't want to react to it immediately and just do something to it or demand that it be a certain way or whatever, right? So it's like, all right, so now that it's here, what does a healing relationship to anger look like? Part of just fundamentally what I'm hearing is, well, we need to make that relationship conscious. And we need to start asking the right questions. And we just need to come into relationship with it in whatever intimate way each of us have in terms of doing that sort of thing. And I think that's a part of what we're exploring today. Is it's like, so how do we not make use of it, but really how to make use of anger, how to be with it in a way that honors our continual evolution, life force, and growth as a part of that, and not as like this thing that needs to be gotten rid of.
I guess it'll be very interesting to see what everybody says, like how they've worked with anger in their own healing path.
Well, I know I've gotten a lot of support working with non-dual healers. But also, I think in this, it speaks, I think, to what both Henrik and Andrew were saying. I think it also, we need to take care of our nervous systems with it, because sometimes physically we can't tolerate everything that could possibly be generational repression of anger. And I think that there's certainly a body element where it's important that we kind of pace ourselves about what our nervous systems can take.
I think that's a great point, because I can't remember who said it earlier, but I think it was Andrew. It was like, you get stupid when you get angry, and there's a physiological response, right? So we have to learn when anger shows up. One of the things that we have to do if we're going to give it a place is we have to learn how to take care of ourselves within it before we can even start to receive whatever nourishment is in it, if there is.
Maybe I'll bring a real example to the table, and you guys can try to help me out here. So this happened almost exactly a week ago. I was going to the supermarket to buy a birthday cake and some birthday candles because we wanted to celebrate my dad's birthday. And I was struggling to find the candles, and somebody eventually pointed me in the direction of where they were, which was on the counter where they sell all the like cakes and pastries and stuff. And there's somebody behind the counter, helping people out and stuff. And there was a couple there speaking to the salesperson behind the counter, and the candles were just like right in the corner where like there was no way for me to like get around them and like look at the candles. So I just said like, oh, excuse me, I just want to look at these candles. But neither the couple nor the salesperson seemed willing to move, so I just kind of like stretched my hand and started looking at them that way. Which arguably you could say like, okay, maybe that was a little bit rude on my part. But then I guess the employee found that very distracting and was no longer able to hold the conversation that he was having with those two other customers. And so he very rudely asked me to like step aside. I was like, look, I'm just like trying to get to these candles. And I like, if you guys just move like, 30 centimeters to the left here, this would all be fine. You guys could carry on your conversation and I could do my thing. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he like gave me some kind of snide remark or something. Um, and yeah, I left so pissed off about that. And there's a part of me that wanted to be really mean and kind of like be a Karen, as they say, and like maybe call the manager and says like, look, your employee's being very rude here. But at the same time, I had enough awareness in me that it's like, well, what is that really going to accomplish? It's just going to create more suffering in the world. It's going to create more suffering for this employee. It's not really going to benefit me in any way. And so I just chose not to do nothing and left. And I mean, I did buy the candle, but and fortunately, I was able to like let it go and have a good time with my family and celebrate the birthday party. But even retelling this story to you guys now, I still feel the surge of anger come through a bit.
One thing that I mean, I'm so curious what everyone has to say. One thing that occurs to me is that there are we have a lot of experiences where we feel like we are very rightfully angry, and it makes a lot of sense in the situation. And then there are times when I know I feel, and maybe you felt this to some degree, of like, why am I this angry over this thing? But like there's a sense of irrationality to it. And then, or what we deem irrationality, and I find in those moments it's very easy to become self-aggressive or to try to shut it down somehow and say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this right now because of whatever reason. And you can, like, there's like the psychological approach of trying to figure out, oh, maybe I'm feeling this way because X, Y, and Z. And then there's maybe what we're talking about here, which is the letting go of having to understand it in that moment and creating a place for it, and coming into that relationship where we're neither, and I think it was spoken about earlier about this new relationship with it, of not necessarily letting it take you over, and also not repressing it, which also, by the way, includes elements of letting it take you over and repressing it. I think there's this idea of like there's like the perfect way to be with it, and if we just get to that place, then we will have done it. And like because we're messed up humans, there's no perfect way, but even just the intention of, maybe I'll let myself feel this in my body for a few more seconds than I usually do, and take a breath before I do something about it, and then I can do whatever I want to do about it. And maybe it's the same thing I would have done. But just even those few extra seconds of creating a space for it seems to be at least a step, as opposed to the like, oh, fuck, why did I get so angry about that? Or I'm still angry about that. A breath, and then okay, it's there. And then continue with whatever you're doing.
One way that I work with it, I think I love how you're both saying the first step is sort of acknowledging that it's there, even, because I think that's probably the most important step. And an exercise that I've been working with is to tell myself, but I'm going to tell you in this instance, Henrik, is, of course you're angry.
Feels so kind.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that does help to know that it's okay to be angry.
Because I would even take it a step further and say all anger is justified. Maybe not the acting it out, but that anytime it comes up, there's some, whether that's like Andrew was saying, like psychological or having to do with the past, or whether that's in the present, might not matter, but that it's justified. The feeling is justified, and how do we allow space for it? And if I'm too angry, because I'll tell myself, of course I'm angry. And then if it's like too intense, then I'll imagine a resonant being or somebody who really cares about me telling me, of course you're angry.
Many things fall away. You say that.
And it's just it's so kind. It's so like, it's saying like exactly who you are is okay. Like exactly who you are.
There's this like unconscious belief that there's something wrong with me for feeling this thing in this particular moment. Mm-hmm. And that seems to address that belief in that moment.
Right. And by not engaging it in that sort of memory-driven way, like anger has no place here. Saying, of course you're angry. All of these things drop away, and what I'm left with is a curiosity. Let me get to know this. Let me understand this a little bit more. Right? So if anger is if it all has a right to exist, then there's some intelligence in it, and it would be worth it to at least take a look.
I also just want to add, it seems like it's a pretty, that's a beautiful thing to say to yourself with pretty much anything.
Yes.
Of course you're sad. Of course you're anxious.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I was thinking this, wasn't sure if I wanted to say it, but Jason Schulman often says, I only know one thing. And I say it in all these different ways. So part of why we're exploring anger, part of the fundamentals, like Andrew said, it applies to everything. Right? Because the non-dual approach, we're talking about a non-dual approach. And the non-dual approach says it all has a right to exist. And I think we all come together to sort of explore okay, what next?
And to remind ourselves that it all has a place to exist. It's so easy to forget.
When I first met Jason back in 2008, I can't remember the context, but I had asked him a question. It was during a workshop, and he recounted the story about Jesus overturning the money changing tables at the temple. And that was, I think, it always stuck with me, and a really beautiful lesson about even prophets get angry and sometimes act out that anger for justice, right?
Yeah, it's I think like you were saying kind of at the beginning, like there's there can be a healthy assertiveness, or like boundary setting, or like asking for what you want, or it's like these things that sometimes people are not, when we're very nice people, these things can feel more uncomfortable, but it's like we can like no, or can you please move over 30 inches? I need to look at something on the counter here. It's not personal, just please scoot over. Or little things, or big things too. But it's I think I don't know, I'm thinking at the moment that these kinds of boundary setting, or healthy assertiveness, or whatever it might be, it's like when we're not comfortable with some of these feelings that exist in us, I think that they become much harder in life, doing these things.
I'm wondering about also the gendered aspect of this, because I'm thinking the healers that I've learned the most about positive aggression have been my female healers, like Brenda Blessings or Susan Tolbert, and like a lot of personal work on this. And it made me, and I wonder what you all think. So I'm wondering, a lot of times when we think about perpetration of violence, we think about men, right? Men having the physical power, or like historically men's role in this. I'm wondering if that kind of gets in the way, if there's a way, like if you're endeavoring to be a good healing person, then anger is wrong because of the ways that that's gendered. I don't want to pigeonhole any of you or say, but I'm wondering if that's like a barrier to like being in touch with it.
Completely. Yeah, and entirely. It's you don't want to be one of the bad men. So to be one of the good men, you just kind of, block it all down.
Yeah.
Um, and there've been a lot of bad men, and you don't, yeah. And there aren't a ton of, at least, growing up, healthy models of what is like an integrated version of actually allowing yourself to feel anger and express it in a healthy way look like.
Yeah.
That's not in our culture. And you have to really start to look elsewhere for that. I mean, starting to seep in, but I think you articulated it. I mean, that's my experience of it, at least, of, becoming very afraid of it and its power.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in my case, I mean, there is a gendered aspect to this, but perhaps not quite in the way you mean it. So my mom is Mexican and my dad is Swedish. And so my mom was much more in touch with her emotions and much more comfortable expressing anger. Whereas my dad was sort of, more like cool, aloof Swede. And I guess I tried to model myself more around my dad. I guess, he's my male role model. But also, I was actually a little bit terrified as to how out of control my mom seemed to get at times. And I didn't really want that for myself to lose control in that way. But yeah, I think that was actually quite disempowering for me because it took me many years to then kind of reclaim that vitality.
Interestingly, I mean, I'm just thinking it's I don't know, we're a little, we're a small data set, right? Like, the five of us here, but in my family of origin, those roles were also reversed. Like my father is, very, very, very nice, very kind, very easygoing. I think I remember him getting angry twice, and they were like huge things that set him off. My mother, is like, she's like a firecracker. She's wild. And there were also, there were but it's interesting, like what we're talking about, the gender thing. There were messages in my family from my mother's side about um, um, I don't want to say like the dangers of men, but like I remember being very young, and there were, being involved in like stop rape now marches, and these things. Like I was very young, and there were just a lot of so I think for me, like I picked up a little bit of that, probably fear of, male aggression of any sort, from that perspective. And I really had to kind of unwrap it for myself, and find out that like there's healthy ways to embody assertiveness and even healthy aggression, and like these kinds of things. It's like we all kind of have our own unique path, I guess, on how it shaped us.
I can tell you a story about getting out of control. And I think so. I have some questions too about the relationship between anger and vulnerability. And I think that because it's almost like anger, and I think this is why we try to repress it, there's this energy that wants to, I think, conquer and master and dominate, right? And then the opposite of that being vulnerability, or when we collapse, right? So both the positive ways that can get expressed and the negative ways. But years ago, my kids were little, and since my kids were little, I've been raising them on my own. And there was a snowstorm. I live in New Jersey, and I got a phone call from the police, which was very nice, that they said you have to move your car because they're going to clean the streets. And so I said, okay, I can, but my kids are still in their pajamas. They were too little to leave in the apartment alone. And so I said, can you, and the operator was on the phone with the police officer who was ticketing and towing cars. I said, can you just wait a few minutes till I get my kids dressed? I'll be out. He said, no. And I marched out there, and it probably wasn't very smart to yell at a police officer. But I marched out there and I said, do you have a mother? Do you have a wife? Do you have children? Like, I'm dragging my kids out in the snow in their pajamas, and you couldn't wait a few minutes. Like, I was incensed at the lack of consideration. And I think underneath that too, I was really vulnerable. I was with my kids on my own, having to move my car in the middle of a snowstorm and figuring it out. So I'm not sure what I wanted, the point I want to make with that story is, but I'm sharing the story about those out of control feelings and like justice and vulnerability and yeah.
It brings up so much. I mean, even just the idea of out of control, and losing a sense of control and fully surrendering to that's, I think it's such a personally, it's a very scary thing to allow something of that kind of magnitude, and what happens when that's all. It's
I think, Eloiza, you mentioned Brenda Blessings, and I take a cue from her when anger shows up for me, because I watched her do this over the years. Whenever I saw her start to become angry, I knew she was slowing things down, and she used it as a cue to drop into her heart. And I know that's sort of just like, okay, what does that mean? How does that experience look like? But for me, in my life, what it means is like when I'm catching the anger, because I grew up, I'm a little bit different than some of the stories that were shared, in that I grew up sort of fighting, and anger was just sort of just the way it was. So for me, it takes me a while to even recognize that I'm angry. I only recognize it when the people I'm speaking to are responding. I go, oh, something's happening here. I'm doing something. And I use that as an opportunity to drop into my heart. And when I say drop into my heart, what I mean is take a moment to include more about the situation. Take a moment to not believe hook, line, and sinker exactly what judgment I've just made about this situation. And I can't get there unless I slow things down and I acknowledge I'm in this right now. I'm in this, and I really want to come to a conclusion, and I want to believe this, and I want to, all of that. And I have to know myself enough to slow things down, and sometimes even completely remove myself from a situation for as long as I need to, for things to settle down, so I can start to become conscious again and do that non-dual thing of including more information. Because only the heart can include everything, that kind of consciousness. So that's I just wanted to bring that in too, because this is like anger for me is like, that's like my spiritual path at this point.
I was just thinking, I'd be very curious for everyone, just in terms of even some practical ways of making space for it, expressing it.
So in addition to like just the simple statement, of course I'm angry, I think that allows spaciousness. The other question I had for you all is, if we think about holding opposites, like what's the opposite of anger for all of you?
Well, for me, it is, I don't know if it's the opposite, but, well, I was going to say love, but maybe I should think about it a little bit more. But I do know that when I've dealt with my anger very intentionally and very deeply, and really let myself, and I could maybe share a little bit about that, but that love and understanding and compassion opened dramatically in a place that it really wasn't before. So I mean, I have personally really lived that experience.
I I I I feel that true, and I want to also speak to the kind of other side of it, which is that I know in myself I can use understanding and compassion as a way to bypass feeling angry about a situation. That I can kind of try to see how, uh, why is this person acting this way? Oh, it's because this. Well, of course, they're angry about that, or of course, that's why they would act that way. And it can, for me, dropping into that understanding space actually become a way to bypass these kind of. I'm even going to use this word, and it's just what comes up. It's like these like lower feelings. What like a part of me has judged to be these lower bad feelings that I shouldn't be feeling. So I'm going to try to understand you, and so I think, Damon, to your point, it sounds like you've actually dropped into those feelings, and then as a natural result,
Yeah,
this kind of compassion and understanding occurs. It's almost like an order of operations
right.
type thing.
And I actually think I want to make sure we put this in this conversation, which is actually really dealing with anger, like in a therapeutic way. So like this is something that I'm actually kind of passionate about because I've had I've had some real lived experience with, which is how afraid of my anger I was when I was younger. And you know I don't want to make it a long story, but basically at the time, like what I really kind of um, experienced was that I didn't actually feel love for my mother, and I thought that was very odd. And this was probably in my late teens. And because of a lot of work that I was doing, healing work and therapeutic work, I started to really, through these kinds of things that we're talking about today, really let myself get in touch with my anger. And it turns out that the level of anger, and we're talking about a level where like lower self stuff, where inside of me was the desire to destroy,
Mhm.
like to decimate, like I could not rip something apart out of existence deep enough. And I let myself find healthy ways to express that level of anger and rage. Um, and what I'm talking about now is like, and I would create these sort of safe settings for myself where I could destroy things, and I could let my anger like actually like live and be expressed through me. um and this went on for, quite honestly, for months, but like I would find a thing and I'm like, okay, and it would come up and I would just let the destructive force live. um but it was in a healthy, kind of therapy, my like self-therapeutic way. And as I let myself go through this process, for quite some time, it was on the other end of it that, months later, that I was like, huh. And I felt this like genuine love for my mother that I had never felt before.
Mm.
So,
So I'm a fan of this. I mean, I think it's
yeah.
really important.
So I wonder if I love the story, and it sounds really, Damon, like you're really opened up space for love and compassion to enter. I would argue that the opposite of anger is apathy or disconnection. I think that anger can be a form of love. And I think that we land back in love and compassion when we let ourselves feel it. But I'm wondering if one of the opposites is not compassion, is actually apathy, like a shut down, disconnected, don't feel like in your case, I might be wrong, but that like you had some level of apathy or lack of love for your mother, right? I'm wondering if that's if apathy is the opposite of anger, because I'm thinking about righteous anger and the impulse to act and to defend others, to stand up for others, to stand up for ourselves.
You talked about desire. Let me see, I took a note here. Something to do with desire and anger, right? What was the relationship there originally? It's like...
Well, I'm wondering, like, when we have thwarted desires or our needs weren't met, that, like, for instance, Henrik's example about his need to get the candles for his father not being met and then being disregarded, right, by the employees and the people there, that would be a natural reaction, that his desire was thwarted by somebody else in an unfair way. With Damon, I can't say I can draw on my experiences with my own mother, right? But the ways that my own needs were not met and disregarded, or the feelings of rejection, like that, it would be normal if I have this desire to express my life force and be myself, and then that's thwarted. I guess that anger would be a normal reaction.
But the reason I'm bringing it up and trying to make that connection is because, I just had a healing. My healer, Jeff Frankel, pointed out to me that hatred is very close to love, right? And anger as an intensification of, or hatred as an intensification of anger, right? So there's something about that. What I was saying is, like, for me, anger is like a pushing away. Like, I can't tolerate this. Get out of here. Get away from me, right? And so that also indicates that I have a desire for something. Right, so there's something that I want, and the anger is an indication of that. Right, so the opposite of that would have to be, like you said, sort of like an indifference, sort of like an apathy, because it's like an anti-life thing. It's unresponsive, and it's different than life and death. It's different than love and fear. Or it's if you feel into it, I think you'd get more information than if we talked about it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are both life force, right? Like, so if you're cutting off your anger, you're cutting off your life force, and including the healthy desire for whatever it is you want to create in the world, or whatever. I was curious about something you mentioned, Damon, about creating these sort of safe spaces to express anger in a therapeutic environment. So I know that's something I've also engaged with, in particular, like with various forms of body psychotherapy, hitting stuff with like a bataka and stuff. And I remember when I first did that kind of stuff, it did feel very freeing and life affirming, and like I was reclaiming a lot of vitality and stuff. But at one point, it kind of felt like I'd run out of steam, and that this wasn't like actually doing anything more for me. And I remember my therapist keep trying to push me into doing more of that, and I was like, yeah, but this is just not doing anything for me anymore. How did you deal with that, or did you ever get to such a point where?
I think it's a great point, because I think in those settings, especially with practitioners who like to do these kinds of immersion therapies, I don't know what you'd call them exactly, that there can be a tendency to try to push or encourage, and sometimes that's good, because maybe we don't want to actually come in contact with something, and it can help us do that. But you're absolutely right. It's really, I mean, what you're looking for is the authenticity. It's like when it's there for real, and you're able to you've been through different things that you can do to let yourself really get in touch with what's inside of you. Then great, let it rip. There can be a desire to destroy and annihilate, and okay, that needs a place, like everything else. But yeah, so then like being like, okay, let's just keep going. Let's like keep hitting the bat or keep hitting the tennis racket. And it's like now there's this almost egoic thing going on where, you're looking for something instead of letting the real thing come forward and be expressed. So I think honestly, I think it can be tricky. And I think it's not right or wrong, but you have to be willing to maybe experiment. And it's also, I think that would be also a process of like when I used to do that stuff a lot more, that in itself was a process of me getting to know myself. Like literally me saying to myself, is this authentic?
Mm-hmm.
And then like sometimes it wasn't. And I'm like, it's not real right now. This isn't real. And that was like that in itself was like a learning and a discerning sort of growing within me.
Yeah.
That answers the question, but
No, that's helpful.
I think a lower octave of like the using the baton and punching it out. Although I have a lot of clients who have they really benefited from, let's say, boxing or other kinds of activities. I know for me, like hiking and dance really helped me work through some anger in my body. But a lower octave, I think of that is like what Tim started us off with, like inviting everything in and writing it. And if it's so ugly that we don't want to keep it, let's say we have a journal and we don't want to remember that ugliness, writing it, being with it, and then throwing it out. But I find that that's like kind of a simple practice, but that really like being present with all the ugly feelings. And then usually, like we've all been saying, love returns, right? When we let ourselves be with that thing and let it be vivid and be what it is. Of course, you all know this. And then it's able to transform and be something else.
I want to just piggyback on that. I know we're just about out of time, but in addition to the writing it out, something I have found helpful is I'll open my voice memos app and just record, like, and that way I can let it out with my voice and let that take over. And then, whether you want to delete it or save it for the sake of remembering nice times, you can. But just the expression of the voice really, I think, allows more to get out. And you can just give space to all of the thoughts, all of the feelings, and I found that particularly helpful in those moments. And then don't send the voice memo to the person.
Right. The other day I was hiking and I was combining a couple of these. I was hiking and just whatever was I was like it was like this guttural, it's like I just kept moving in the hiking and it was like this guttural like that like as I was hiking, and it just felt very like present with exactly how I was feeling, and it was like, this feels great, and I just kind of let it keep going until it was done. Yeah.
So we are out of time. But listen, I think this is a topic we could mine for many, many sessions if we wanted to.
We didn't figure it all out yet?
No, I don't think so, my friend. But I hope we all got something out of this today. I enjoyed it. And, obviously this has been brought to you by the Foundation for Nonduality. We live and die by all of your donations. So we also thrive. So anything that you feel like sending our way, please do, and stay in touch. And we're going to keep doing this, and hopefully Eloiza will continue to join us and offer her wisdom. This has been great. So for now, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
You bless the years as they roll on by, and the days are a sign what you're thinking. We want eternity, and you give us time, and our own lives seem to pass while we're blinking. Oh God of mysteries beyond our thinking, oh God of mysteries gone far beyond our thinking. We ask for light, you give us night and day, to help us truly find our own way. We want you only.